welcome to Beth Who Reads. That's me, I'm Beth and I read. If you read my handle differently, you can stick around. I used to vlog a lot back in the day. It's something I want to continue doing, but obviously that's going to take time to get back into the swing of things. I thought I would do a books I could read for the first time again as kind of like an introductory experience to who I am and what I like about books. I'm based in Canberra, Australia, and just like any normal adult 30-year-old woman does, I like reading about people who fall in love and dragons and mermaids and pirates. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 selections here. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list. When I think about that sentence, I wish I could read this and have that experience of reading it for the first time again. These are definitely, I think, the standouts of the ones that at least that I have on my shelf. So I thought for number 1, I would go back to the book that got me into reading again. So it was 2017. I read a lot as a teenager. I don't think I was a particularly voracious reader, but I did read quite a bit and enjoyed it. This was the book that got me back into reading. It was More Than This by Patrick Ness. Patrick Ness is one of my all-time favourite authors, perhaps the top for me. He came to Australia last year and I was sick and I couldn't go. I don't think I've ever felt more gutted in my life at how much that broke my heart. But he was so sweet. I posted on my Bookster and he reposted and he said he's coming back. So when he comes back, I'll get to meet him. But this was my first one that I read and I literally picked it up because I don't have it. I have a paperback copy. I have the original paperback copy I read. I purchased this hardback copy with a little peekaboo hole in it from a secondhand store because I just love this one so much. But on my paperback copy, John Green up the top had said, just read it. I had just read, oh, what's it called? The John Green cancer story. Always, always, Hazel and Augustus. I have to look it up. This is really embarrassing. Why is my brain failing me? The Fault in Our Stars. I'm kind of upset at myself. Anyway. Point is, I had just read The Fault in Our Stars in a day and I loved it. I'd watched the movies. John Green said, just read it. So I did. The man knows what he's talking about. This was my first Patrick Ness and it is this incredible dual storyline. So our book is told from the perspective of a teenage boy and he is like in the middle of post-apocalyptic suburbia. And we watch as he like regains consciousness. He walks outside and sees everything's like dusty and decrepit and old. But he kind of, as he kind of loses consciousness and goes in and out of consciousness. In between those chapters, we have just like a contemporary high school story. And it's this really interesting mix of the high stakes of the post-apocalyptic world and everything that's going on with that as that story develops, but simultaneously you have this high school, he's dealing with bullies, romance, exams, family relationships, two very different stories and they're overlapping and you don't know which one's reality. It was such a good way for me to get back into reading. Everything in life is solved by a Patrick Ness book. For me, he writes concisely but descriptive and beautiful, but tells a great story with action and character development and romance. I love. I wish I could experience this one for the first time again. I've just rambled for 5 minutes about this book. Agree with John Green, just read it. Fantastic book. Ultimately, reading this was the reason that I'm the reader I am today. The next one I picked was Icebreaker, and whilst it wasn't my first romance that I read, it was one of the first, definitely my first sports romance that I read, and I just loved it. I think it was one of the first smutty books that I read, and I know that people have a mix of feelings about this. I loved it. I loved the relationship between the characters. I didn't really mind that there wasn't like a villain, that there wasn't a huge amount of conflict. I felt like it was a very grounded romance. I would really like to have that experience as a newbie romance reader because I certainly am a lot more cynical now, and I wonder if I reread this whether I would still give it the 5 stars that I gave it or if I'd be a bit more critical. Not sure, and I don't know if I want to find out because I love this one so much. Next one on my list, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This book really impacted me in a positive way. I understand that it's like the biggest book in the world and people are either like ravenous for Xaden or they hate it. I just love this world and these characters. I had COVID when I started reading this and I was in the foulest mood. All I wanted was to be like tucked up in bed by mummy because I don't live at home and I lived by myself at the time. Whilst I was miserable, couldn't breathe, just suffering basically, this book took me to that place when I was reading as a teenager and filled my heart with everything I needed it to. There is romance, there is action, there's fantasy, there's politics. I absolutely devoured this. I devoured it in a day, and it's something I really, really want to go back and read. I remember the first chapter, and I still stand by this point. I think the first chapter of Fourth Wing is one of the strongest first chapters I've ever read in any book ever. It establishes your character, your motivations, your conflict. Say what you will, I love Rebecca Yarros. I got to meet her at Comic-Con last year. She was fabulous. Don't get me wrong, Xaden's great. He's hot, he's shadow magic, he's a bit dangerous. I get it. I get it. The whole world gets it. But all of the characters in this world do it for me. I think Violet's a really interesting female protagonist. Obviously Xaden's really interesting. I love Liam so much. Liam is the man I want to marry. I love him. Rydok, Sawyer, Imogen. Who else do we have? Mira. We don't get a lot of Mira in the first book, but I think she's really strong. Mummy Sorengale. I like Dane. I'm in the minority, I know. I think Dane is a really interesting and really compelling character, and I'm so interested to see what happens further. With all that being said, I don't really want to talk too much in case, you know, people haven't read the book and are interested in picking it up. I loved this and I wish I could have the experience again, especially considering I had COVID. I wish I could read this for the first time again in full consciousness, in a way where I can actually breathe oxygen and I'm not in pain and looking for a way to escape. And there's dragons. I forgot to mention how much I love the dragons. Every dragon, not just our two primary ones, but just dragon. I have a dragon tattooed on my body. I love dragons, and not because of this book. It was actually, funnily enough, it was tattooed because of a Patrick Ness book. I like dragons. Alright, now we're into kind of more contemporary territory. Where shall we start? Let's go with this one. Last year I did my first 24-hour readathon, so we just set literally a timer for 24 hours to see how much we could read in that time. I devoured the Prey Island duology. This is going to be really difficult to show on camera. Hopefully it comes across. Kendra Marino is an author who is coming to Babe 2025. Tej and I, we bought tickets. It's gotta be like a year ago now, or like we were prepared. We committed to do it over a year ago now. Basically all of last year, my reading was primarily dedicated to reading authors who are going to be attending the event because I didn't really know anyone and I wanted to explore more of the authors that were attending. And the premise is what sold me on this book, and I am so glad, like I am so glad I did a 24-hour readathon. It is like Squid Games, but a Why Choose Romance. So we have Billy, our main character. She's like an exotic dancer, but she wants to like open her own joint so like she can run the show, but like she can teach other girls and she can look after the girls and they can be sexy and independent and get paid and like everyone's happy and everyone's good. But she ends up, she gives like a private lap dance to someone and then he's like, oh, you're not gonna do that, I'm gonna actually kidnap you. And she wakes up, she's like knocked out or whatever, and she wakes up on a plane. So one, the cover was super pretty. The plane lands and she's in like this cage and there's just like men all around her in caves. Men of all different kinds of like builds, backgrounds. There's like business people, there's like wrestling types, there's just like everything you can imagine and in between. And she's the only woman that's there. Basically they get out of the cages and there's like a voiceover, like Big Brother kind of style. And he's like, hey guys, welcome to the island. Welcome to Murder Games. Basically, the last one standing wins. Here's some weapons. Good luck. And we basically journey with her through these games. And I don't really want to say anything more I loved this book. I loved this book. It is probably my second favorite Waichu's romance I've ever read, because I feel like the way these characters grow between the two books, it's so well explored that like the trauma that they go through is explored, like, and then the plot is just so good. I genuinely, there's a scene towards the end of book 1 with sharks. That's all I'm gonna say in case anyone has read it, so you know what I'm talking about. My heart was like bouncing out of my chest, and like, I love action sequences, but I don't think I've ever been that affected by like just wanting to know, being scared to know what is going to happen next in the action sequence. This book sold me on being a Kendra Marino fan. I have now gotten to read one of the arcs for her most recent series that she's working on. I wish I could return to this world again. It is perfectly wrapped up in 2 books. We don't need more from this world, but oh my god, I wish I could experience this again for the first time. If you're just wanting something that is like fun action, little gory, bit smutty, Prey Island by Kendra Marino and Predator Point book 2. The next one, look, it's kind of, I picked a series rather than like a singular book, because this one I just couldn't separate the books into like one best one. It is the Windy City series by Liz Tomford. This series is the gold standard in contemporary romance. When I first joined Bookstagram, I reached out to a couple of people who I realised also got this book kind of around a similar time to me, and basically said, hey, do you want to read a book together? And the girl said yes. And so we were a mix from Queensland, New South Wales and Canberra. There are still 4 of us who meet every single week for this book club as a result of Mile High. Mile High, I do think, is the weakest of the series, which is why I couldn't kind of separate it, but it's not because it's a bad book, it's just because these, I can't distinguish which one I love most. I'm someone who deals in absolutes. I don't do like 0.5, 0.25, whatever stars. I just do whole stars. This was a 4-star. I still really loved it. These 3 books, these are 5-star books. Like unequivocally infinity star. I love this. I love this series. I love this woman. I love her characters so much. They are complicated and flawed. They have their own journeys that they go on, but they have a romance where they grow together in their own journeys, but also as a couple. The plot is interesting and it's interwoven across the books. It's not like a series of standalones where you just follow like a different couple through each book, which, to be fair, these ones do. But our couples from previous books play a really important part in the relationships and individuals in subsequent books. It is just heartwarming. I can't think of another word to describe the way that these books feel like they heal me from inside out. I don't cry very often in books. I'm pretty sure I've cried in every single one of these because of how beautiful these romances are. They are technically a series, not a book. I'm breaking my own rules a bit by books I could read for the first time, changing this into series. By reading it in a book club, we actually split each book into 3 different segments and read those, you know, 150 pages or whatever it's going to be, 1 week at a time. I wish I could have just sat down and devoured this. I don't regret at all reading this in my book club. I actually think that doing it that way allowed us to really slow down and analyze like why we liked these characters so much. But God, I wish that I could go back to Indy and Ryan and just devour their story in a single sitting. Gold standard of romance. Liz Tomford has sold me as a fan for life. I've already pre-ordered Rewind It Back, the 5th book in this series, and anything that she writes moving forward, I will be reading. Fantastic series. If you haven't read any romance, this is the series that I recommend you start with. Then we have another one that I read because of the Babe event that's happening next year, which is Say You Swear by Megan Brandy. I actually don't have too much to say about this. I think if you haven't read it, it's best to go in blind. That being said, I think it's important to know that this is about college sports kind of romance, which like as a 30-year-old, I am so over high school and college romances. Like, I'm just past it. I'm past miscommunication. I'm past people behaving stupid, which I think is part of why I liked the Windy City series so much. Like, they're adults doing adult things, adult jobs with adult problems. I just feel like, yes, this is a college romance and they do deal with some stuff that's like that, but I feel like the romance in this between Noah and Ari, it's one of the best ones I've ever read. Noah Riley is like, I don't deal with this whole like book boyfriend thing that, like, I understand what it is, but if I were to have one, Noah Riley would be pretty bloody close. Like I said, I can't talk too much about this. I think you need to go into this one blind to read it. I wept in this. There is a plot twist that I didn't expect or foresee to come that is kind of like melodramatic, but the way that it's explored works, and I just want to read it again for the first time because I had a really, really good time reading it. I have another babe book that made it onto my list, and so this is why it's really fun to go to events like this, because you'll discover books that you might not have read were it not for that event. Layla Pine, Strokes at Midnight. This woman, I will do anything for this woman because of this book. I loved this so much, and I literally, like, I'd never heard of it. I've never heard of her prior to the event. This is an Aussie romance, so obviously being an Australian myself who reads romance, this was something that really piqued my interest. This is technically book 2 in a series, so if you want to read book 1 before you proceed with the series, I get it. I just don't think book 1 is nearly as strong as this one. And this will give you, like, all the stuff that you need from book 1 is basically told to you at the start of this one. So you don't actually need to read book 1. If you can, you want, but I started here not really realizing it was book 2, and it made complete sense. It's fine. So Amanda had a toxic relationship that ended in book 1. I won't spoil what happened there. Quite a bad relationship. Our chunky girl, she's a nurse, but she's also, she hasn't lost her V card yet, and she's kind of just over it. So her and her girlfriends get all dressed up and take her out to like the local bar so she can just get it over and done with. She kind of struggles with some self-worth issues to do with the way that she looks, and for someone who is a bigger girl and who genuinely struggles with self-worth because of the way that I look, could totally relate to Amanda in that way. We switch perspectives to Levi Fox, Olympian, rower, tattooed hottie with a body. This man, the way that people go feral over Rysand, that is me with Levi Fox. This man, I wish was real. He has also just exited a very toxic relationship with like an influencer style girlfriend. He goes out with his like mates to the same pub that Amanda just is about to hang out with, and he just wants to like have a palate cleanser, just like a one night stand palate cleanser to celebrate breaking off his relationship. It sounds bad, but I promise it gets better. He basically spies Amanda from across the room and is like, this is the most beautiful woman I have ever seen in my entire life. He is down bad. She sees him and is like, that's like a certified 10 out of 10 who's looking at me. We are doing this. I might never get an opportunity to have a man like this again. What an amazing experience to have for your first time. We have a fantastic, like, spicy scene of them together for the first time. He is phenomenal. She is great. I have a great time. She wants a one night stand because there's no possible way that a man like him would want a woman like her. My friend, that is the start of the story. This book not only is just like such a fun premise, also explores just like a really interesting plot. It has a twist on the pregnancy trope. It is the best book with the surprise pregnancy trope that I've ever read. It is so interesting, and I literally recommend this to everyone who reads romance. I love it so much, and I love that it's like an Australian contemporary romance. The characters I can see myself in. I have projected a previous flame from my life onto Levi, so I think that certainly helped at the time for me reading. I was projecting myself onto Amanda and him onto Levi, but I wish I could read this again because I just fell in love with these characters and this story and this author. You don't discover new favorites very often, so when it happens, it's important. I absolutely love this book, love this story, love these characters, and I'm really looking forward to meeting Layla in 3 months. I get to meet her in 3 months. That's very exciting. So at the start of this video, I mentioned that one of the things I really love are mermaids and pirates. This is the best mermaids and pirates book I have ever read. It is A Ship of Bones and Teeth by Karina Halley. You know, the thing that pisses me off most about like the mermaid sirens tropes is that it's so often like they're pretty, they're feminine. If you know the lore, these are monsters, certified monsters, luring men to their deaths and like egregiously and messily murdering them. This does that. She does that. This is essentially a retelling, a dark retelling of The Little Mermaid, and it is so much fun. If you are interested at even remotely in sirens or pirates, this is it. So Maran, our main girl, much like the Disney movie that we all watched as kids, she marries Prince Eric. It's not spelt the same, so it's not the same Eric, alright. Turns out Eric, bit of a dick when you actually get to know him. And so we basically have Princess Maran is our main character. She has, you know, been a human for the last however many years, and she basically is like, yeah, human is not it. I don't know what I was thinking. It's time for me to go back to being a mermaid. That was great. Let's go. But she's got to find the appropriate magic to get her there to contact the Sea Witch. She is kidnapped by the infamous Captain Ramsay Bones. Yeah. He's a hottie. He is a certified hottie. He's a bad boy. And he's got a secret. I loved this book so much. A book that deals with romance and world building and like genuine, compelling, interesting plot. I have not read a book that made me feel the way that this one feels, and I am so excited to keep exploring more of Karina's writing because I just fell in love with this story so much. I wish people would write more like sirens and pirates. I think it's a really interesting topic, and she does. So I've not actually read that many pirate books, to be completely fair. However, I have struggled with the ones that I have read. I think that they really struggle to get the politics, familiar relationship, and just the genuine camaraderie that the pirates and the pirate ships have. She got the pirate culture down pat, and she had mermaids. If you haven't read it yet, go pick it up and read it. And now we're down to the last one. I don't think most people have like one favorite book, but I think if I had to pick anything out of all this, this one might be like my all-time #1 read. It is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. V.E. Schwab. So Victor and Eli, 2 college roommates, and they're both into like science and stuff. And Eli's like, oi, mate, I think I've discovered the secret to getting superpowers. Victor's like, what are you on about, mate? This is crazy. Like, stop talking about this. And Eli's like, no. Like, here are all these articles, like superpowers exist. I think it's created by like near-death experiences. So if we have a near-death experience, we can get superpowers, and we'll get like an A on our like thesis because we've cracked the code to superpowers. It sounds stupid. I get it. It is just the most interesting character story I think I've ever read. Basically, we're following the trope of like superheroes and superpowers, the hero and the villain archetype, and what makes those the hero or the villain. I don't want to say too much more. There is a wonderful cast of characters in this book, and it genuinely explores like this idea of good and evil. You know, that is such a black and white concept. How do we define the human experience when you are superhuman? Beautiful writing, super engaging plot, not a long book at all. Book 2 is a bit longer. I love it just as much. When a book with like magic or powers or whatever explores things but in like a really unique way, the way that these powers manifest and are shown on page might be my favorite. Oh, I love this book, and we've been waiting for years and years for book 3 to come out. She said she might not ever do it, but she's actively writing it now. So even though I don't get to read it for the first time again, I'm gonna get to go back and reread and refamiliarize myself with these characters. I'm going to try and hold all of these books up. I'm not convinced it will be a success. So these are my top 8, technically 12, but top 8 books that I wish I could read for the first time again. I think I'll do like a part 2 of this video at some point, because I definitely have books that I feel just as passionately about, but I do feel like these ones are like the cream of the crop, the top ones that I genuinely wish I could have that experience reading for the first time again. I hope that you feel like you might know me a little bit better through my reading taste. Come say hi in the comments. I really want to like have a chat and get to know you and befriend you. Follow me on Bookstagram at bethwhoreads. If you're interested in picking any of these books that I recommended up, let me know, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.